Hi, I'm Jeannie Lauren Dowden for Conduit News. The city of Fort Smith is considering many initiatives that some residents would consider to be part of a socialist agenda. Here to talk about that with us today is attorney and Fort Smith local, Joey McCutchen. Hey, Joey.
Hey, how are you, Jenny?
I'm good. Good to have you back on. It's been a minute.
It has been good to be back on.
Yeah, well, it always seems like when you are here on Conduit, it's because something has come up because you're a watchdog, and I really appreciate that about you. Fort Smith City Council, there's a meeting tonight. Several things are on the agenda. I think that would raise the eyebrows of many conservatives. Walk us through what's going on there in Fort Smith.
Well, I think what Fort Smith has done, pretty much through unelected bureaucrats, other unelected people, committees, they've formed the makings of what was known in communist China as a 15-minute city. That is that people are able to walk, bike, roll, and run anywhere in the city to go to church, to go to school, to go to the market within 15 minutes. Ultimately it's about control. But here in the U.S., what's happening in local towns, just like conservative Fort Smith, Arkansas, is you've got the left who is applying for these huge grants. For example, in Fort Smith, our city administrator, without the permission of the council, applied for a $25 million grant. It's called a RAISE, RAISE grant, which in essence has all of these UN, United Nations words in it: sustainability, equity, diversity, inclusion, words that are a code for the left. And
Yeah,
we take this grant, there's strings. Our entire culture as a city will have changed
absolutely.
because this will be the master plan, and we will be forced to embrace all of these socialist terms.
That is so wild to me. The thought that came up really fast that I want to point out, and you may remember this at the Republican Party state convention in June, the Republican Party passed a platform change that spoke out against and condemned any of these this verbiage or anything that aligned with these socialist ideas, the WHO, that sort of thing, World Economic Forum. And so I hope that conservative legislators and people in your district really speak out about this. But talk to the council is going to be voting on a resolution. They're going to be talking about Save Fort Smith and then Move Fort Smith. First, though, they're looking at this refugee resettlement program.
Yeah,
What are your thoughts on
totally,
that?
totally separate from, really not, but to a large degree separate from Safe Fort Smith and Move Fort Smith, are the
Yeah.
15-minute cities. But yes, extremely important issue if you care about what's happening with illegal aliens all over this country. Um, Fayetteville, Northwest Arkansas, Canopy, Northwest Arkansas is coming to speak tonight uh, at our meeting per the request of our mayor, who George McGill, who's a fine man, but is also to the far left. And they want to talk to Fort Smith about their resettlement program of refugees. Now, I'm not sure how they define a refugee, but my guess is it's not all refugees, but rather it's illegal aliens and folks who are crossing our border illegally. And they want to try to bring that to Fort Smith. And I think the citizens are now aware of it. And that's the important part. Citizens
Mhm.
just aren't aware or
Yeah.
educated, but it's now been posted on Facebook. I encourage all of my friends out there to go to Joey McCutchen on Facebook and look at some of the postings. Tonight's a study session, but we've got to stop this dead in its tracks. Look, Fort Smith has been a welcoming city for Cubans, for Vietnamese, and a very, very large Hispanic population. We can't even support our own, Jenny, and now we're going to be spending money to support a leftist organization in Northwest Arkansas, Canopy, Northwest Arkansas.
Yeah, I would encourage also, we were talking about this off camera, the Arkansas legislature, they had a subcommittee and they grilled DHS, Arkansas DHS, over the resettlement program and specifically had questions about canopy. And I would just encourage anyone, I believe the date was August 27th of 2023. There have since been numerous news reports come out about that subcommittee meeting questioning DHS and what that looks like. And like you said, the economy, how the nation is right now, finances, inflation, it is so hard just for the average Arkansan to make ends meet. And then also, we were talking about you have these local nonprofits who provide clothing, food shelters, furniture at times, rental assistance. And what we're seeing is these, like Canopy, refugee resettlement programs come in and then suck up those resources. And what does that do for legal residents there in the community and for their kids?
Right. I mean, our citizens of Arkansas and across this country are struggling
Yeah.
with inflation. And I mean, you talk about grocery bills, gas bills, and Fort Smith in particular. It's just one tax after another, one rate increase after another. 2 weeks ago, they increased the citizens' water rates. Now tonight, because of a consent decree, which, by the way, about a month ago, the board approved paying $580,000 in civil penalties, which are coming out of the taxpayers' pocket. So you've got to have priorities, right? You've got to have priorities. Tonight, they're going to approve raising our sewer rates in the coming years. And these grants, they're not free because there's local matches. For example, back to the 15-minute city, what they're calling Move Fort Smith, the city administrator applied for this $25 million grant, but it's not free. There's $5 million in local matching funds. And the questions many citizens are asking, where is this $5 million coming from? Because we cannot, at close to 10% sales tax rate, we can't afford more taxation in Fort Smith. So it's a matter of priorities.
What do people need to know? So you have Safe Fort Smith, you have Move Fort Smith. What do people need to know? What do they need to know about the meeting tonight? What would you encourage them to do?
You know, tonight is on Safe Fort Smith. As a personal injury trial lawyer, Jenny, I've been involved in initiatives all over this state on distracted driving, and have put on initiatives in Fort Smith on distracted driving. So they bill it as Safe Fort Smith. They go out and they do a study about where these accidents are occurring, how many folks are getting injured and killed. But the problem is that's great information to have, but it goes from a plan, how are we going to address safety, to a manifesto where it takes Joe Biden's agenda and it starts talking about terms of equity. Okay, now it's about equity. That is equality of result, which all of this will go to the north side of town, which discriminates against the south side of town. Equity is a form of discrimination against people, something that we have fought, many of us have fought tooth and nail to end discrimination in our society. Equity is nothing more than discrimination. And so they bill it as, oh, this is just about safety. If we can save one life, it's a great deal. But no, it comes with strings. Now we get all the federal strings. We get all the federal buzzwords that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have passed down, and it becomes our culture in Fort Smith. Now everything that comes down the pike is evaluated in terms of sustainability. What's sustainable? Well, cars aren't sustainable. We're going to move to bikes. We're going to move to bikes. We're going to move to walking. We're going to move to rolling. And it's almost absurd. I asked them the other night at the board meeting, how many of you guys pulled up on your bicycle tonight? Because I don't think you're going to be riding your bike to work.
Hey, do you remember that one time, it was like a year or two ago, and I'm sorry, but Pete Buttigieg, they had like that very short clip of him riding his bike, to work. And it's like, okay, we're so sure he does that. I mean, the hypocrisy from the left, and I don't know about you, Joey, but listening to all of this, seeing these grants come in, strings are always attached with federal funding, but then seeing the direction of Fort Smith and you see the direction of our country, these are leftist policies, these are leftist ideas. And then you look ahead to November and it's like, is this what you want to continue to vote for? Is this the leadership that you want in Fort Smith, at your state level, in DC? Like, what would you say to someone about all of this?
Well, what I would say is that through the Freedom of Information Act, I did some work and I got the documents, I got the grant application, and you would be shocked who was writing letters on behalf of to get this grant that is going to change our culture, and that any conservative who was elected would be voting against if it were in the Arkansas State House. But some of those names are on there because they want the free money. For example, Tom Cotton wrote a letter to Buttigieg and said Fort Smith needs this money. I mean, that is just hypocrisy. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
but that is wrong. And the list goes right down the line from Congressman Bozeman all the way to George McGill and our leftist city administrator, Carl Gefkin. So people, I mean, look, do we give them the benefit of the doubt that they just didn't know what they were doing? But it's concerning of all the folks who get behind these things and they don't understand what the real motivation is. Because elected officials, what I've learned is elected officials really have a small role in our government. What I've seen locally in Fort Smith is we've got an appointed city administrator who's making all these decisions. He rolled out this 200 or 300 page plan and the board had no idea about it. It was foisted on them 2 weeks ago, and they're trying to pass it the next meeting until the citizens rose up and said, wait a minute.
I can't believe that. Requested 25 million federal funds with no board approval.
Yeah, I asked board member, when did you approve this in an open meeting? You know that I'm a big open meeting advocate.
Yeah.
What meeting did I miss where you approved, gave Carl Gefkin authority to ask for a $25 million grant that obligates local citizens who are having trouble with their water bills to pay $5 million in local match funds? Well, he never discussed it with me. So
the hypocrisy from them. Can you imagine if a Republican conservative mayor or city administrator went above and around the board and did this? And I just find it so incredibly ironic. Republicans are a threat to democracy. But then you have issues like this where it goes, against board approval. You have Kamala, it's not won a primary in her life. Now all of a sudden she's, appointed as a candidate. But conservatives are the threat.
Yeah,
the threat to democracy.
I want to say this: people who are listening around the state, FOIA, you understand what's going on in your local community. All politics are local. And you need to FOIA what all grants have you applied for? You need to look for sustainability grants. The thing that started me down this path was I went to a meeting of the Winthrop Rockefeller Institute because I just didn't think they were representing conservative values. I found out they weren't. And at the very end of the meeting, after all this kumbaya between the 5 Republicans that were there and the 50 leftist liberals that were there, they turned the floor over to a lady there to speak on sustainability. So it became very partisan. And I learned that Fort Smith has recently received a $14.5 million sustainability grant for the green agenda, right? For electric posts, for everything supporting that agenda. And so you need to ask. People need to ask those questions.
On your Facebook post, I believe a number of people have shared this, and they live all over the state. And a woman commented, and she said, "This is exactly what's happening here in Jonesboro." And so I would just echo what you're encouraging our viewers to do, is to look into what's happening locally, because it could be present and they wouldn't even know it.
Yeah, I think Cersei's another one. I think Cersei's involved in it. There's no telling where, but we need to find out, and we need to stop it dead in its tracks, because it's literally changing our cultural values overnight through unelected city planners, unelected city administrators who, you know, our board of directors are folks who go to work every day and they don't keep tabs on the city administrator. And I'm telling you what, he's running amok. I mean, he and the mayor asked for this canopy group to come down to Fort Smith and speak to regarding resettlement. I mean, you know, we're a kind community, we're a compassionate community, but when is enough enough? And I think we've reached that point.
I think so too. Well, anything else that you would like to add or our viewers to know before we go?
Just a quick couple. Look, the reason we know this doesn't work is places like Emporia, Kansas, where there's eminent domain, where private property is being taken from citizens through programs like this, programs just like this, where they're being told what they can do with their houses. Fort Smith has sent this to the planning committee or the zoning folks, the planning committees, and they're going to look at this, and that is very scary to me because we have a very onerous. Somebody on the north side of town's grass gets too high. They have an old junker car. They'll come out, put a lien on the property. They'll fine them, put a lien on the property. Then they'll take that property and sell it. And this is how these things start. And then they start per UN guidelines, 300 dwellings per acre. They'll start stacking and packing. Again, it all plays in. It's a well-organized plan by the left. And I would dare say a communist, not just a socialist, but look at communist China. I mean, look at North Korea. They're examples of this, but also go to Emporia, Kansas, Lawrence, Kansas, where the city is being required to eliminate natural gas and just use electricity. I mean, these concerns are real and they're happening. Cheyenne, Wyoming's trying to roll it back because big oil was stopped from fracking. So there's examples of this in Emporia, Kansas. They're trying to roll it back. They see what it's doing to their community.
Yeah, I read a book not too long ago. It was Voddie Baucham. He's a pastor, but he was talking about just the shift in our culture, and he was talking about the communist ideals and just the tentacles, how many there are and how far they reach, and how unaware most Americans are of the connections. It was a great read, and I think, as you mentioned, just people get involved, get educated, and what we're looking at in November, really the most important election. But for now, like you said, politics, it's all local. And so hopefully people will show up tonight and really stay on the city of Fort Smith.
Yeah, it's really what's happening in downtown Fort Smith is just a microcosm of what's happening on the national stage. But all politics are local. And if they can pass this in a city like Fort Smith or Searcy or Claremore, Oklahoma, where they're fighting it now, they can pass it anywhere. And we become a new nation with new values and new principles governed by equity, diversity, and inclusion. And I don't say that in a positive way. All those things sound great, but we're a nation founded on equality of opportunity, not equality of result.
Joey, keep us posted on how things go tonight. We'd love to have you back on again soon.
Thank you. Appreciate the interview.